So, to conclude, what have we learned the last 2 days of grinding Stormgate, or, well, what have we learned since the 1st of Feb? We're mostly playing Vanguard on the ladder. Well, let's call it day zero. At first, we learned that Lancers with upgrade are really good against Gaunts, because Lancers get a passive right from the get go that reduces every instance of damage taken by 3, and Gaunts do damage that it has glaives, so like it splits damage over multiple units, like it jumps around. So they attack a unit and then it jumps to 2 other units, so he hits 3 units in total, and the Gaunt does 5 damage on the main hit, and I don't know if the glaives also do 5 or less, but either way, as soon as the Gaunt starts hitting Lancers that have an upgrade, you are basically tickling the Lancers whilst giving them a big boost. It's kind of like giving them stim. So Lancers that get that 5 stacks of their upgrade off of your opponent having a few too many Gaunts, like instantaneously, suddenly these Lancers are hitting super fast, running super fast, and just kind of destroying you. So I kind of feel like Gaunts are very good early game because you, together with your Brutes, you kill the camps, and they're pretty hard to contest for Vanguard unless they make a lot of Lancers. And then you get a lot of these Fiends because you kill a lot of neutral creeps. And then suddenly you have a lot of map control because you have a lot of Fiends that don't want to die. And then the Vanguard's kind of like on the back foot and they have to turtle until they get that Lancer upgrade, and then they can maybe really get out of their base. And so I think that this boy over here, the Doombringer, can really help Infernals in the mid game with that, because a lot of Infernals are going for the Magmadon right now and do the trampling and everything, which is good, as you can see at the second row here. But if you get that one Doombringer from your Conclave, you put your excess amount of Gaunts in there, and you just drop them into the main base. Like, as soon as you kill 1 or 2 Bobs, immediately Fiends start spawning and everything goes to mayhem just starts. And you get rid of a bunch of Gaunts out of your army so that these Lancers don't get those buffs so fast. Because Brutes do very slow but hard damage, and the Magmadon, I don't know if that actually triggers the passive at all from the upgrade, but at least Lancers super good against those early Infernal armies. So look to utilize the Doombringer a little bit. I think that's really cool. Second thing that we learned early on before the open beta started is this basically, is that the Magmadon Trample can break the trees for super easy all-ins with Infernals, because it's kind of hard to break trees, especially near the natural, like behind your natural basically. Breaking those trees, you have to like bring a worker along, and especially as Vanguard, that's not like very common. But as Infernals, you can do it, because if you have the Flame On upgrade for your Imps, they're like super good Banelings that you can throw on the Lancers, which honestly, Imps are perhaps the most broken thing in this game right now. But Trample Magmadons break trees earlier than their counterpart, the Vulcan, because the Vulcan needs an upgrade to actually break the trees, where the Magmadon can already do it without upgrading the Trample. So I feel like as an Infernal player, you can use Doombringers and Magmadons to really open up a lot of paths of harass and really keep that Vanguard trapped in his base. And then the last one, as I revealed in one of my recent casts, is that the Met Tech in a sentry post, which is called the Met Post or something, I'm not sure, is so busted. It gives so much healing. And on top of having a couple Medtechs in your army, your Lancers just don't die. It's crazy good for a defensive position, especially when you put it on the high ground like you see in this thumbnail. It's like, it's so good. The Medtech in the sentry post is really good. And really hard to deal with for armies of the Infernal that can't deal with this sentry outpost. So Magmadons and Brutes can't get there, so you really need like the Doomborns, I think they're called, like the long-range throwy boys, and Gaunts to get up close. And, well, Gaunts can hit it, but then they kind of expose themselves. So sometimes if there's like a couple Vulcans or just some Exos, suddenly your Gaunts can really get taken down. So I feel like the medtech in Sentry Post is really strong. And then day one after stream, we talked about it. The trees in the back are really busted. I drew it on a map here. It doesn't matter which position, but let's assume that you're bottom position. Then here are these trees that we're talking about. You can see that your reinforcement route is completely outside of the middle. So even if your opponent is like stationed over here, kind of defending his half of the map, you can just walk past everything as long as this vision post is taken by you and not your opponent. And you can just bring some workers from your natural or even from a potential third base and just, probably from your natural, because you want to do this as early as possible, right? And you just want to take down a couple trees with your workers, because it's not like in StarCraft where if they mine a mineral, they have to keep the mineral and can't mine another one, which is how StarCraft does like temporary walls. But with the trees, they can just cut down another one and another one and another one. And suddenly, if your opponent has like a lot of defenses here in this choke, which especially when you're Vanguard against Infernal, for example, when the Infernal is kind of snowballing with the Gaunts and has like 15 Fiends because he killed all the neutral camps and part of your army, you're just like choked up here, like, oh, I don't want to let this guy overwhelm me. So you like build buildings here and you have this nice choke that helps you make sure that the overwhelming numbers of the Infernal don't overwhelm you. But then you just kind of break the back and you just walk into his natural or into his main. And I think that's a big thing in Broken Crown right now, is if you can get a good timing attack to hit the back here, you can do a lot of damage. And this is why for the foreseeable future, I think that this is a better third base. We already see the best players that have been casting break down these trees themselves and then take this as a third base and just accept that they have to, defend this ramp and this ramp. Instead of, well, this is a nicer area to defend, obviously, because you can defend your third, and you can defend your natural with this one choke. Have your army there, and you're fine, but then you're so vulnerable. Now, second thing that I learned is that dog upgrade is actually crazy. You can get it reactively by just making the biolab and then upgrading it. It's only 25 Therium, so you can mine it with like one worker. And because the Vanguard is so crazy at building buildings really fast, like if you use the boost and like 3 bobs, all buildings almost finish instantaneously. It's actually crazy. So you can just scout around with your dog and be like, I feel like this guy is going to be very vulnerable to dogs. And then you just go for your 2 racks, you get your dog upgrade, the scout upgrade, and you can really, really do some damage, especially if there's no wall or if they're like fast expanding or whatever. Because if you have about 6 scouts and you just click on a habitat, I think it's 2 attacks and the habitat's just gone or the meat farm is just gone. And that's pretty fast. I don't know if that's a bug, but habitats and meat farms just evaporate versus these super fast units. So if you ever get a surround on them, it's just done. I think it's really strong and basically a super solid opener right now for Vanguard, which you can read down below here, that just opening 2 bays or 2 barracks, having that potential of doing the scout upgrade into doing a lot of run-bys, into surrounding certain units, and even if nothing happens and you have just 5, 6, 8 dogs with the upgrade, all of the camps on the map are yours to take. It goes super fast and you get a lot of income back for it, basically. So you have map control early on, and you can have infinite scouting, of course, with the scout ability. I don't know, I'm calling it a dog. And then also you get all of the resource camps, you can get the vision camps, you can even go further beyond and get like the health camp if you really want, because that veterancy is really nice. Because if you have like rank 2 dogs and they move out, and you just run into their base, you can do some damage there. And if you force them to run back, That's probably all the time you need to set up a strong defense with more Lancers or some Exos or get your first medtech out, that type of stuff. Or if you're going into super fast Vulcans, getting like that third Vulcan. So yeah, dogs are good. Of course, the Hornet shield up drone, like, it's such a meme. It's such a meme. Hornets have such high DPS, but they're paper planes. If you have like 3 Exos, I think it's 4 Exo shots that kill a Hornet. And when you are maneuvering them yourselves, it feels like they just die every time something looks at them. Like, a Shroud Stone looks at the Hornet wrong, and the Hornet just drops out of the sky. But with shield up, and let's be real, with Vanguard, you always have top bar ability energy because they're just kind of mediocre top bar abilities, and you only have 3 instead of the infernal 6. Very balanced. So you have energy for the shield up ability a lot of the time. And then you just shield up a Hornet, and suddenly his counters are like, oh shit, this Hornet is killing me. Like, especially with the Exos or Gaunts, who will try to shoot you out of the air. You just fly in, shield up the front Hornet. If you have 2 or 3 Hornets, you just put one slightly forward, so you know it's going to get auto-targeted. Just put a shield on it, and suddenly you destroy like 5 Gaunts like it's nothing. And then, well, usually the game kind of ends there with early Hornet attacks. So it's pretty strong. It's very fearsome. And then, kind of as a conclusion, I feel like the standard meta right now is just having 2 barracks versus a vault plus conclave opener, which sees the Infernal and Vanguard just kind of trying to get their own resource caps. And it kind of depends on how hard both of them go. Sometimes the Infernal player goes really hard, goes like Vault, Conclave, and build units immediately, move out immediately, and even build a second Vault behind that before ever thinking about an expansion. But it could also come from the Vanguard side, where he's just going to be, or she, is just going to be building Lancers right away. So instead of like the dog opener, you just go Lancers right away. You can have like 6-7 Lancers before your Infernal player can really start hitting that second camp. And that's when you just go for the engagement, right? You can go engage them, and then if you kill them early, especially if you kill some Gaunts early, then suddenly they have to be very defensive, get those meat farms up, because they don't have infinite charges of units. If they've spent their money on the units already, and you've killed the units, then if they don't have charges, then they can use the top bar ability, blah, blah, blah. But it's very annoying as an Infernal to lose the units that you didn't plan on losing. Because, yeah, it feels very strong to just be able to pop out all those brutes, but if you didn't plan on having to pop out any brutes, suddenly you can be in big trouble. And oh, that reminds me of one last thing. I didn't write it down, but one of the biggest things that Infernals are doing right now on my ladder games is that they are putting some Iron Vaults and some Conclaves at like faraway bases, just kind of as static defense, so that if there's an attack there, they can just spawn 3 brutes or 3 Hellborns, or a Gaunt, or whatever, right away. So they don't have to invest in a lot of static defense. Of course, they just drop down these Shroud Stones anyways, because they're free. They cost top bar energy, so they're basically free. And then having a couple production buildings there, you can still use them to buff up your main army, but you don't put them into your hotkeys, basically what I'm trying to say. If you're like an StarCraft player, you just don't put them in your hotkeys, like your 7th, 8th Iron Vault anyways. And then if there's an attack there, you can immediately get those 3 charges, get some units, and you can even refresh the charges, get more units, and then immediately you have your base defended, even though you weren't in position, really. So yeah, that's my day 0 and day 1 update for the Stormgate meta. I hope to do more of these daily tricks and tips. And I hope you learned something. I'll see you out on the ladder. Cheers.